"You don't belong on this ice. You never did. Pack your bag and get out of my rink." He said it loud enough for every skater to hear, loud enough for the parents in the bleachers to turn their heads, loud enough for the sound to bounce off the cold white walls and hang there in the refrigerated air like something that could not be taken back. The girl did not move right away. She stood at center ice in her worn practice jacket, the one with the fraying zipper pull and the small gold pin on the left lapel. She held her skate bag in both hands. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She looked at Coach Harlan Briggs with the stillness that only comes from a person who has stood in front of something much larger than this and did not break. Every skater on the ice stopped moving. Nobody said a word. He had no idea who she really was. He had no idea what that small gold pin meant, or what she had carried across 3 separate winters on the biggest stages in the world. He saw a young woman in an old jacket with second-hand skates, and he saw a problem he wanted removed. He had just made the worst decision of his coaching career. Let me take you back, 48 hours before this, before the pin and the silence of 40 witnesses. Her name was Celeste Okafor, and she had been skating since she was 4 years old. She grew up in the kind of neighborhood where the winters were real, hard, gray, and unforgiving, in a city where the public rink charged $4 for open skate on weekdays. Her mother Gloria worked the early hospital laundry shift. Her father Bernard drove a delivery truck 6 days a week. They were careful with money in the way that parents are when they have a gifted child and limited resources, and the conviction that the gift must not be allowed to go to waste. Every spare dollar that could be directed toward Celeste's skating was. They could not afford a private coach. They could afford a library card and a DVD player and a grandmother named Adaise who had once, in another country in another life, been a competitive figure skater herself. Grandma Adaise had come to the United States in 1974 with a single suitcase and a philosophy degree and had not looked backward often. But when Celeste came home from her first session at the public rink, eyes wide, coat still on, talking too fast, Grandma Adaise sat down at the kitchen table and smiled the slow, quiet smile of someone who recognizes something. She opened the cedar chest at the foot of her bed. Inside, wrapped in yellowed tissue paper, was a pair of white leather skates, and tucked inside the left skate, folded to the size of a playing card, was a photograph of a young woman in a red competition dress, caught mid-spin in a moment of absolute grace on a rink in Lagos in 1971. Grandma Adaise held the photograph for a long moment. Then she handed Celeste the skates. That was the beginning. For the next 13 years, Celeste trained. She trained at 4:30 in the morning at the public rink before it opened to the public. She trained on a patch of synthetic ice her father built in their garage from materials he researched for 6 months. She trained watching her grandmother's competition videos, learning the arc of a jump before her body knew how to make one. Her grandmother taught her edge work, blade angles, the mechanics of a rocker that carries you into a spin. And when Celeste was 12, a woman named Coach Diane Ellsworth was running a Saturday morning session at the public rink and watched Celeste complete a flawless double axel in practice skates and jeans, simply skating the way she could not help but skate. And Coach Ellsworth walked across the ice and said, "Whose child is this?" What followed was 7 years of dedication that most people don't have words for. Coach Ellsworth worked with Celeste for free for 2 years while they found funding. Sponsorships, a youth foundation grant. Celeste competed in regional events, then nationals, where she placed second at 15, first at 16, and walked into the international circuit at 17 with a reputation that preceded her. 3 Olympics, 3 medals, gold in the team event at the first, silver in the individual at the second, by a margin so slim the judges' scores were disputed for weeks. Gold again, individual, at the third, a performance that one broadcaster described, live, in a voice that had forgotten itself, as the single most technically perfect free skate witnessed in 30 years of covering the sport. She was 17 the first time, she was 25 the third time. Those 8 years contained a broken ankle that healed wrong and had to be rebroken, a sponsorship dispute that nearly ended her funding. The death of Grandma Adaise, 2 weeks before the second Olympics, which Celeste skated through with the photograph folded inside her left skate, the place it had always lived. The gold pin was a small replica of the Olympic rings given to athletes who had medaled at least twice. She wore it every day, not out of vanity, because her grandmother had never owned one, and she wore it for her. She was home for the first time in 3 years now, rehabbing a knee injury, and she had decided to spend the recovery doing something she had wanted to do for years: give back. Coach youth skaters, mentor children who reminded her of herself at 4 years old. She contacted the Eastfield Ice Center with a simple email asking to volunteer with the youth program. The assistant director, Mrs. Trevino, said yes, while head coach Harlan Briggs was away at a conference. Coach Briggs returned, saw a young black woman in an old jacket helping his intermediate group, watched from the bleachers for 11 minutes, and decided what kind of person he was looking at. He was wrong about almost everything. He walked onto the ice during the final 10 minutes of the session. "Who authorized this?" he said. "Mrs. Trevino arranged for me to volunteer with the intermediate group," Celeste said. "And what exactly are your qualifications?" He said this the way people say words they find distasteful. "I'd be happy to sit down and go through them," she said. He looked at her jacket, her skates. He made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a dismissal, but something uglier than either. "I don't think that'll be necessary. I can see what I'm looking at." He could not. The next morning he returned with decision already made. 9 children filed in behind Celeste with their breath making small clouds and their skate bags bumping their hips. 3 parents sat in the bleachers. Mrs. Trevino stood at the boards with her clipboard. Coach Briggs skated toward Celeste before she could reach the ice. "You're done here," he said. "You don't have the credentials to be on this ice in a coaching capacity. I'm not going to have my students picking up bad habits from someone who wandered in off the street." Nobody in the bleachers moved. The 9 children were silent. "Off the street," Celeste repeated, not anger. Just the phrase held up to the light so everyone could see what it was. He stepped toward her and grabbed her skate bag. It dropped to the rubber matting with a sound too loud for such a small thing. The side pocket unzipped on impact, and Grandma Daisy's photograph slid out and fell to the floor, face down. Celeste looked at the photograph. She looked at it with something not quite grief and not quite anger, but something older than either. The look of a person standing at the intersection of the present moment and every moment that had built toward it. Every person in that rink was looking at the photograph on the floor. This small rectangle of a woman in a red dress caught mid-spin in Lagos in 1971. And something about its presence, about the care with which it had been carried, was communicating to the room something that Harlan Briggs was too certain of himself to receive. Celeste crouched and picked up the photograph. She held it the way you hold something sacred before going into a battle you know you will win. Then she stood and said quietly, "I'll go." And she walked out. But what the room didn't know was that Celeste's phone had been vibrating in her jacket pocket for 4 minutes. The name on the screen was the director of the United States Figure Skating Association. Remember that. The call lasted 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Standing in the parking lot, skate bag on the ground, photograph in her free hand. "Yes, I'll come to the board meeting, thank you." Then she called Coach Diane Ellsworth, who listened without interrupting and said, with the unhurried confidence of a woman who had been in many rooms with many powerful people, "Let me make a few calls." Coach Ellsworth sat on the board of the Regional Skating Federation and was personal friends with the National Director of Youth Development at U.S. Figure Skating. Those calls took 45 minutes. By the end of them, the Eastfield Ice Center had received an official inquiry from the national governing body of figure skating, asking for documentation related to volunteer credential review, volunteer application handling, and the circumstances of that morning's session. Coach Briggs did not know any of this was happening. He filed a routine incident report and went home satisfied. He had been running this rink for 11 years without serious challenge. He saw no reason today would be different. 4 days later, the Eastfield Recreation Authority Director Patricia Chen called Coach Briggs into her office. "Did you review the volunteer's credentials before removing her?" He said he had made a professional judgment based on direct observation. She turned her computer screen toward him. On it was the U.S. figure skating athlete profile for Celeste Okafor, a photograph in a white competition dress on the ice at the Winter Games. At the moment, her 3rd Olympic gold was confirmed. Below it, 3 Olympics, 3 medals, the highest scored individual free skate in the history of the international event. Coach Briggs looked at the screen. He looked at it for a long time. A parent named Sandra had recorded the entire removal on her phone, not to share it, but because something about the morning felt important and wrong in equal measure. She had sent it to Mrs. Trevino with a note. "I think you should see this." It showed everything, the bag dropping, the photograph falling, Celeste crouching to pick it up with both hands, Briggs standing with his arms crossed saying with no ambiguity, "You don't belong on this ice, you never did." The Federation scheduled a meeting, not at Federation offices, at the rink. Celeste had made one request, that it happen where the incident had happened in front of the students and families. Patricia Chen agreed immediately. Coach Briggs was told it was a standard review. He was not told who would be in the room. He arrived to find the bleachers full, all 9 intermediate students in their practice jackets, their parents, Mrs. Trevino, Patricia Chen, 2 Federation representatives, and at the far end of the ice, at the boards, speaking quietly to Sandra's 9-year-old daughter, was Celeste Okafor, same practice jacket. The gold pin caught the light. Coach Briggs stopped walking. David Park, Federation representative, 22 years in elite athlete development, stepped forward and read Celeste's name and record into the public space of that rink. 3 Olympics, 3 medals, the highest scored individual free skate in the history of international competition. Volunteer applicant. A woman who had asked for nothing except the chance to give something back. Coach Briggs went pale. Not metaphorically. The color drained from his face the way it drains when certainty collapses against the wall of what is true. He looked at the pin, he looked at the photograph in her left hand and understood, finally, too late, in front of 40 people, what he had knocked to the floor. He sat down in the bleacher seat behind him without meaning to. A parent named Marcus began to clap, slowly. Then 3 more parents, then the children. Sandra's daughter clapped the hardest, knowing only that the woman who had fixed her edges had come back. Celeste did not look at Coach Briggs. She was looking at the children. She was smiling at the children, because they were why she had come. And they were still why. Coach Briggs was placed on administrative leave that day. The independent review found procedural failures at multiple levels, no credential review conducted, no escalation protocol followed, and a pattern, 4 complaints from Black and Latino families in the preceding 5 years, all received, logged, and not acted upon. His employment ended 31 days later. The 47-second video Sandra had recorded circulated first in skating communities, then everywhere, carried by its headline phrase as a hashtag. The Recreation Authority received over 4,000 public comments in the first week. The National Figure Skating Body announced a review of volunteer intake protocols across all affiliated facilities. 3 regional programs initiated their own internal audits. The 4 families with prior complaints were contacted, acknowledged, and included in a process that resulted in a community advisory board with genuine decision-making authority over program design. Celeste returned to the Eastfield Ice Center 6 weeks later, not officially. She came on a Saturday morning in the same jacket, with the photograph in her left skate, and spent 4 hours on the ice with every child who wanted to skate near her. The following spring, she established the Admiral Okafor Youth Figure Skating Fund, named for her grandmother, full scholarships for under-resourced youth skaters in 5 cities, ice time, coaching, equipment, and competition fees. 12 skaters in the inaugural cohort, 41 by the second year. Sandra's daughter was one of the first 12. The fund's motto comes from a letter Grandma Adaiz wrote Celeste after her first national championship. The ice does not know who you are, only your blades can tell it. If this story moves something in you, take a second to like and share it and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me, have you ever walked into a room where someone had already decided who you were before you opened your mouth? What did you do? Here is what really gets me about this story. It is not the video. It is not the headline. It is the photograph. This woman carried her grandmother inside her skate for years, through 3 Olympics, through broken bones, through grief. And when it fell to the floor in that rink, she did not react with anger. She crouched down and picked it up the way you pick up something you will not let the world take. Then she left quietly and she let the truth do its work. She didn't need to argue. She knew what she carried. She had always known. What is the thing you carry that the world doesn't know about? Not your titles. The thing that lives close to the ground that nobody else can see. Tell me. I want to know.